entertaining and informative.
This is Sid and Friends in the Morning.
77 WABC.
Somewhere beyond the sea, somewhere waiting for me.
Bronx High School of Science graduate Bobby Darin. Perfect entry. We've had him back-to-back, belly-to-belly. Economist Steve Moore, that you can hear here on Saturdays after Larry Kudlow's on 10 to 1, followed by Steve 1 to 3, and with a column in today's New York Post. Yesterday, Steve, it was doom and gloom. I thought it was the end of the world. I said, hey, could this be an adjustment? Then the judge corrects me. What was it?
It's called a correction.
And my international leader, Keiji Oda from Japan, calls up this morning. It's okay, Curtis. It's okay. The market is back on track. So is this a correction or is this the future?
Well, Japan did make a recovery last night after, you remember, Japan had their worst night on Monday since 1987. So their market crashed. So the Nikkei has made a bit of a comeback. The Dow futures are up this morning, so that's a good sign. So, I think it's still too early to tell. I mean, we suffered huge losses yesterday and on Friday as a result of that terrible job report. I was just looking at some of the manufacturing numbers, John Katsimatidis, and those numbers looked pretty poor. So I don't know if we're going to have a recession, but I think this economy is just not strong. It's not.
The Fed has to do the right thing and lower interest rates. It's the only thing that's going to stop the recession.
Well, look, I think you finally convinced me, John, that they probably do need to do that. You and I have had a disagreement on that for the last 6 months, but I think it looks like you were probably right. But I'm not so sure that's going to fix things. I mean, the Fed follows the interest rates. It doesn't.
Yeah, but their bosses, the White House, caused the higher interest, the inflation, by shutting down, oil. And the oil price doubled. We said it yesterday. The price of oil doubled. The poor people and middle class going to the gas stations are paying double the price of gas, 40% more for food at the supermarkets. Right. And by closing down the Suez Canal and the Red Sea, it's keeping oil rates up. Yes.
Yeah, no, look, everything you just said is 100% correct. The only issue is whether a Fed rate cut is going to solve that problem. And I say it can help a little bit, but I view it as a Band-Aid on a cancer patient. We need a regime change in Washington. We need new leadership. And I don't mean Kamala Harris because she's just an instant replay of what Biden has done. I mean, did you see the other day? She said, Joe Biden's our greatest president ever. And look, this has been a lousy 3.5 years for most American families. You're exactly right, John. And what Kamala is serving up is basically more of the same. So I think the most important thing is we got to get our debt under control. We've got to produce more oil and gas. We've got to get the regulations off the back of businesses. Gee, I wonder which of the two presidential candidates are going to do that.
Well, the only one that we have a hope of doing that, I guess, is President Trump.
Of course. I mean, he did it once. When I saw him a few weeks ago, he said, I didn't just rebuild the economy once, I rebuilt it twice, because he took over from Obama, rebuilt the economy, and then, of course, after COVID, people forget the last 6 months Trump was president, the economy was on a nice rebound. But my point is, our policies right now, the dials are all, twisted in the wrong direction under Biden and Harris. And, when you've got this, John, this is a presidential candidate, and Kamala Harris, who said she wants to end fracking. Well, 75% of our wells are now horizontal drilling, and they use fracking.
Is it that much? I never checked that statistic.
Yeah.
75% of oil production is quasi-fracking?
Yeah, so what I mean is the two new technologies that really changed the industry, as you know, because you're the expert on this, were horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing. So what I meant to say is 75% of the wells now use one of those two technologies.
Wow. Judge Weinberg, you had a question.
Steve, I'm deeply troubled by Kamala Harris's whole approach to economics. It seems to me she's against free markets. She wants to raise taxes. She wants to constantly regulate. She wants to tell you it's a wonderful thing to have. Everybody should have an electric car, even though they're not viable in the market. So don't you think, in some sense, what we're seeing in the market now is kind of like a Kamala panic because people are afraid that this is what we're looking forward to?
Yeah, I agree. By the way, Judge, you're working 24 hours a day. I mean, every time I turn on WABC,
he's trying to keep up with me.
That's right. I want to be a young guy like John. That's what I want to do. And Curtis is my hero, so I have to follow him too.
Well, you guys are all my heroes. So here's the thing. I think you're onto something. And, Trump tweeted this out yesterday. He basically said, this is the Kamala crash. Now, I'm calling it Kamala catastrophe because the policies that she is espousing are to the left of even where Biden was. And this is a woman who wants to, I made this point on Sean Hannity's show last night on Fox, that this is a woman who wants to get rid of fracking. She wants single-payer health care. So remember, when they used to say, if you like your health care, you can keep it. Now they're saying, no, everybody has to be under the government program. She wants to pack the Supreme Court, John. She wants to get rid of the filibuster, which is one of our safeguards of minority rights in this country. I could go on and on with these things. She's soft on crime. She's had 2 jobs in her life. She was the Attorney General of California, which meant she was the top law enforcement official in the state. And what happened to crime when she was Attorney General? Went through the roof. And then, of course, she became the border czar when she became vice president, and we had the worst border crisis in 50 years.
And Steve, she wants to give Social Security and Medicare to illegal migrants. How's that going to sustain those systems?
Yeah, because we have so much. We're running a big surplus, right? So, no, actually, we're running the biggest deficit in the history of this country. I mean, look, I'm not an alarmist, but as I look at what is happening to our country with respect to what Washington is doing, it's madness, and it's a tribute to the private sector that they're able to take all these body blows from the Washington and still make a profit, but it's getting harder all the time.
Now, Steve Moore, you being from Chicago, it looks very ominous as whoever she chooses as vice president, Harris and that person will go on their tour of all the battleground states, and it'll put them in Chicago for the convention.
Yes.
First off, Barack Obama's favorite team, as he said, the Chicago White Sox, have lost 21 straight. They'll set a new record.
Thanks a lot.
And then my chapter lead in Chicago, Thomas Studhunt, tells me a guy is online at a McDonald's downtown to get his, hopefully an Egg McMuffin, a cup of coffee. Yeah. He comes in with a hatchet, and he says, I want a free cup of coffee. And so everybody is like, I'll give you $1. I'll give you $1. He gets the dollars. He goes up to the counter. He pulls out the hatchet. He hits 3 of the employees, almost kills them.
Wow.
Walks out the door with his cup of coffee. He's drinking it as he's walking down the street.
Oh, my God.
This is the Chicago that the Democrats are walking into with a socialist mayor where anarchy prevails.
Let me ask you, we're sending 3 reporters or something, I think, to Chicago. Should we give them combat pay?
I think I'm going to have the guardian angels protect them because it is out of control. And now, if she picks Shapiro, this is what they're saying on the far left, because I had a confrontation with a guy in the street yesterday. She picks that Jew to be her vice president, and she has that Jew as her husband. That ain't going to play, man.
Where does this come from? Judge, you're Jewish. Where does all this anti-Semitism come from?
It's throughout history. For some reason, when people need a scapegoat, they go after the Jews.
You missed a conversation before we had. The Democratic Party blames Lieberman for being Al Gore's vice president.
We would have been very lucky to have Joe Lieberman as vice president or even president.
He was a very decent person.
Sure, you and I both knew him. A centrist, common sense guy, worked with both sides.
Did you know him, Steve?
I love Joe Lieberman. He was truly one of my favorite Democrats. He was pro free trade. He was pro school choice. He was a great choice for Al Gore. But I've got a question for the judge. You've got the Democratic Party that is been so anti-Israel, so hostile to the Jewish communities, and yet tell me, Judge, I just cannot understand. I can't get my brain around this. Why is it all the Jewish population in America votes for the Democrats?
All right. So Norman Podhoretz from Commentary wrote a book years ago. So why Jews are liberals? Because they identify with the underdog and they've been victims. So they have that kind of empathy. And part of the culture is to make the world a better place. And I think by doing that. Now I've said,
you know what the problem with that is? Every policy the Democrats have put in place have hurt the Black Americans, have hurt the Hispanic Americans. They've made them, they put them into the welfare state. They've ruined the Black family in this country. I mean, I think it's outrageous to say that the liberal agenda has helped. And I know you don't believe that.
No, I don't believe that at all. And by the way,
I know you don't.
I've said often said, and remember, I'm still the House Democrat. I'm a common sense Democrat. But I'm telling you, they have to rename the Democratic Party to the Democratic Socialist Party because that's where they are. Okay, and they have to come back to the center, and I'm hopeful someday they will. And the second thing is, any Jew who's voting with these hostile people to the Jews worldwide and to Israel really ought to rethink their position because they're voting against the interests of the larger civilization, not just the Jewish community.
Yeah. Well, I think the bottom line here is, you're asking me about the economy. I think that investors and workers are looking at this election, and I think most Americans realize that when it comes to the economy, I'm not going to talk about abortion and all these other issues. When it comes to the economy, John Catsimatidis, I don't think there's any question that Trump is superior to Biden and Harris when it comes to the economy. I mean, we have our chart book. I want people to go to Unleash Prosperity Now and get our chart book. It shows 20 statistics, measurements of the economy, and Trump beats Biden on 18 out of the 20.
I bet you that's correct. I mean, he'll bring the price of oil down. Remember what he said? Yes. Drill, baby, drill. Yes. He'll bring the price of oil down. And what I'm afraid of is Iran hates him.
Yep.
Now, Steve Moore, let me bring it back to Chicago and also Judge Weinberg so you can understand the root of anti-Semitism. When Martin Luther King Jr. visited Chicago, he got the worst blowback in Marquette Park. My father explained it. There were neo-Nazis there attacking him, physically attacking him and his supporters. Chicago is the house of the Nation of Islam. First Elijah Muhammad, Louis Farrakhan, right? The most virulent anti-Semites. In the heart of what we think of as a Democrat, liberal, socialist city now, anti-Semitism has eaten up the Democratic Party for years, and now its ugly head is rising. And it's incumbent upon Jews to recognize that.
I agree. By the way, when they lost Eric Cantor as a leader of the United States House of Representatives, he was a bridge to the Jewish community, and they foolishly beat him in a primary with some nobody, a local college professor. And that was just foolish because he was a great leader, and he would have been the bridge. The Jews have to really rethink their position, what they're doing, and how they're voting, because the policies of Biden-Harris are not doing anything. They say nothing about what's going on in the college campuses here, where the Jewish kids are intimidated, and there are lawsuits being brought every day by kids who are afraid to go to school. The most recent one is Columbia University. They undercut Israel all the time. What is Israel supposed to do when they're the victim? All of a sudden, they're going to reprogram the narrative. Israel is the aggressor. How did that happen? There was peace there. Nobody was bothering them. They had jobs. The people were feeding Hamas the intelligence with people getting all those jobs.
Well, we have to take a break. Steve Moore, do appreciate your input. Back to back, belly to belly, 2 days in a row, as he sits there stewing in the fact that the Chicago White Sox are on their
20. How many games in a row?
21.
Oh, it breaks my heart.
That has set a new record. And remember,
we did win a World Series about 15 years ago.
Yeah, and your manager praised Hugo Chavez of Venezuela at that time. He dedicated the World Series victory to Hugo Chavez. Anyway, do appreciate it.